let me start by just talking about what the topic for today is. Well, what we're going to share with you over the next 30 minutes or so is an overview of a collaboration program that we here in Irish Manufacturing Research have been doing over the last year or so with South Carolina and Pennsylvania. And the focus of this collaboration is very much to help small to medium enterprises. Now, there's two groups of SMEs that we're interested in. The first group are based here in Ireland, and these are companies that have got very modern processes and products and technologies and have been investing in their own growth plans. And as a result of that investment, they're looking to expand or export their market into the US market. And we're here, and this whole program is focused around helping those companies to be able to make that transition into the US market as easily as possible. And we're very keen to demystify and de-risk that experience for them. So that's the first group of companies. The second group of companies are the mirror group, which is the small to medium enterprises that are in the US, maybe currently located in South Carolina or Pennsylvania, and are looking at the EU market as an opportunity for them to grow. And again, they see maybe Ireland as a place that could be a very good landing pad for them. So we're helping SME companies in Ireland to go to the US and for US companies to come here. And in that sense, and that's what we're helping them across the Atlantic. And I suppose that's the context of the lighthouse image you see here. We're trying to create a safe passageway for companies in both directions and try and take the risks out of the process in as much as we can, and to make sure there's a warm welcome for companies when they arrive in the US or when they arrive in Ireland. So moving on to look at the agenda for today, I'll quickly introduce you to the team that have been working on this. I'm going to go on to talk about the structure and objective of the proposed program. I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. We've actually broken it out over stage 1 and stage 2. And then I'll go into a little bit more of a deep dive into who and what IMR is. Again, some of you will know this, but some of you may not. And I'll also share a little taster, a little aperitif, as it were, of what it's like to do business in South Carolina and Pennsylvania, and why it is that we're working with South Carolina and Pennsylvania on this particular collaboration. And then I'll just close by talking through next steps should you be interested in developing further, and questions and answers. So in terms of the core team then, I suppose like in every good sports team, we talk about the team that's the backroom team that's off the field, as it were, and then there's a team that are actually with the jerseys on, they're playing on the day. So let me start by talking to the folks, the backroom folks, who have been absolutely essential and critical and fantastic support over the last 9 months to 12 months to help us put this program together. So we've been working exhaustively with the IDA, with Enterprise Ireland, with the American Chamber of Commerce here in Dublin, with the American Embassy here in Dublin, with the Departments of Commerce in the US, particularly in South Carolina and Pennsylvania, and with many SME companies both here and in the US to get their inputs, and finally technology groups here and in the US to get their inputs as well. So we've had probably 20 to 25 groups of people who have been kind of working with us to make sure that what we're putting together here is tailored to the needs of SMEs. So I just want to first of all say a huge thank you to them. But then if I can come back to the 5 folks I have here on the foil, these are the 5 people, I suppose, that have done a lot of the heavy lifting, and going forward will be the points of contact for the program. That's me in the top left-hand corner there. I've been working with the US now for nearly 34 years, and I've worked across 3 different categories and industry sectors. The first one is the multinational sector, mainly in the IT multinational sector, for over 20 years. I've worked for over 10 years now as well in the small to medium enterprise technology startups, and working to develop and commercialize businesses in the US and in Ireland. And I've also worked for several years in the academic sectors, both here and in the United States. So I've had a fair bit of exposure across 3 different sectors. But moving on then to look at the 2 folks to my right, you have Jacob Hickman and you have Anita Patel. Jacob and Anita both come from the state of South Carolina. Jacob is the Director of Business Recruitment in the Upstate, which is one region of South Carolina. You may, for those of us on the call today, you may think of it as a province, almost like Leinster. It's a large, about a third or so of the state. It's called the Upstate. And he is the Director of Business Recruitment there. And to his right, you have Anita Patel. She's with the South Carolina Department of Commerce. And just one heads up for you here. We're in Ireland familiar with the IDA and Enterprise Ireland. They're two separate organisations, obviously all reporting into the government. But in the US, they don't have separate organisations. They're all part of the Department of Commerce. So Anita is, if you will, is like a hybrid between Enterprise Ireland and IDA. And Anita and Jacob are two fantastically energetic people, very, very, very focused on helping companies have a positive experience coming into South Carolina. And indeed, I can testify to that. I've already worked with a couple of companies that have made the transition to South Carolina, and they've had nothing but positive things to say about working with Jacob and Anita. And that's been my experience as well for the last year. So I think they're two fantastic people. And I know that Irish companies who are looking at that state will have a very positive experience working with them. On the bottom of the page, we have Rob Ray and Joseph Burke. Joseph is with the Department of International Business Development in Pennsylvania. So in that sense, he's got a similar kind of brief to Anita. And to his left, then we have Rob Ray. And Rob is co-founder of Columbus Business Partners, which is a consultancy firm that works closely with the state of Pennsylvania to help companies have a positive, what they call landing pad experience. In other words, a welcome and an orientation into the state. Now, both Rob and Joseph have strong links with Ireland as well. Rob indeed worked here for a number of years. He was an engineering manager in a company in Shannon for a number of years. And also Joseph Burke. Then there's a giveaway there in the name, very Irish name for a very, very good reason. His whole previous families, generations before him, have all come from County Mayo. And he has a very strong link with County Mayo himself, even though he's spent most of his life in the US. So, and visits the country on a regular basis. So all of the team here, fantastic people, very, very high energy. But again, I want to emphasize there's another group of maybe 20 to 30 people and organizations that have been together. It's the amalgamation of all of the inputs that have made this thing work. So I want to say thank you to them all. So moving on then to look at the objective of the whole program. Well, as I said, it's all about helping small to medium enterprise companies, or so-called SMEs, and SMEs that are Irish-based or SMEs that are USA-based. And this week and over the next number of weeks, we're going to be talking to groups of companies that are here based in Ireland, but we're also going to be talking to groups of companies in South Carolina and Pennsylvania. And, you know, believe it or not, SME companies, whether you've got coming from an American base or from an Irish base, have a lot of the same issues. And what we are trying to do here in IMR is trying, as I say, to demystify, de-risk, and deliver. And what we mean by that is, for those companies, we want to demystify the experience, first of all, meaning orientation, give them orientation and learning and a welcoming experience in terms of coming into our country and helping them really understand their market and their network and their industrial clusters, and to take the fear factor out of it. The de-risk piece is all about helping them and helping companies to do the heavy lift, you know, in terms of transforming their product, getting their business plan ready, figuring out their manufacturing plans, helping them connect with the right people they can do business with, helping them establish their go-to-market channels. And then the last piece is deliver, which is helping them to scale, to be able to set up here and scale and ramp their business in their new markets. So, you know, for Irish companies here in Ireland right now, that we work with in IMR, we're kind of measured on two main things. We're a not-for-profit organization, originally set up with IDA and Enterprise Ireland. We work alongside those two organizations, and basically, while we're not for profit, we're funded from three sources: 1/3 or so from the Irish government through Enterprise Ireland, 1/3 from EU, and 1/3 from industry. And I'll expand a little bit on who and what we are in a few minutes. But we're measured on two fundamental things. The first thing is, are we using technology, and in this case, Industry 4.0 technology? Are we using are we engaging with technology? Are we embracing the technology and then passing on all that learning to Irish industry to help Irish industry stay as current and as relevant as it can be? So it has the best processes, the highest quality standards, the most competitive manufacturing systems, and the most modern product sets, so that we can, if you like, compete on an international and export our products to any market in the world. So that's the first challenge, and we've been working now for 7 or 8 years with many hundreds of companies up and down Ireland in that regard. The second thing we do is by working with these companies, we're hoping to grow jobs in terms of helping the company grow, and then we grow jobs for Ireland. So that's how we're measured, using technology to give companies a strategic advantage and then helping to grow jobs. And in that regard, if you are an Irish company, as you can see here on the presentation, if you're looking eastward into Europe, which is our home market, obviously EU, we've been working closely now with just about every country in the EU over the last 7 or 8 years, and we have built working relationships with Spain and Germany and Italy and France and the UK and all the other countries, and we can help the Irish clients, Irish SME clients and multinational clients that work with us to be able to form linkages into those countries by virtue of the fact that we already have a working relationship in place. So it's somewhat of a natural thing that we're now extending that service beyond just Europe, which is obviously our home market, so we'd start there, but we're now extending that market into the US, and we're now putting those self-same supports and systems in place into the US, and we're starting this whole pilot program with the states of Pennsylvania and South Carolina. These 2 states have been selected mainly because they're very, very pro-business and they're very, very pro-SME. The experiences that they provide and the testimonials that we're aware of companies going into these states is just phenomenally positive. And the second thing that's very key is the technology clusters that are located in these states are very well aligned with the Irish market. In a minute, you'll see Pennsylvania has very high concentration of life sciences, agri-sciences, advanced manufacturing type technologies, whereas South Carolina is very much focused on aerospace and automotive. So between the two, they complement each other, and together they create a fantastic alignment with Ireland. So enough about that. I just want to move on now and talk about how the program is structured. So we've broken it out into a stage 1 and stage 2, as you'll see here on the bottom of the page. Stage 1 is all about focusing to help this whole demystify conversation. It's about helping companies have a look-see at what their target market looks like, and we're structuring a series of trade events and trade visits in Q4 this year and Q1 next year, and I'm going to expand on that in a second. And then stage 2 is for those companies that have identified, having done stage 1 and having worked with us for a couple of months and are at a stage where they want to go to a much more serious level, then we have a stage 2 process as well. And stage 2 is a full 12-month program where companies get a chance to immerse themselves in the whole experience of transforming. I'm going to expand on these 2 stages now over the next 2 files, so I'm going to move on. So stage 1. So later on this year, we're going to have a series of trade events. As you'll see here on the bottom of the page, we're going to be hosting groups of companies, and that's how we're going to do this. Probably 10 to 15 companies together in groups. We're going to host a group from Pennsylvania. We're going to host a group from South Carolina, and those 2 groups are going to come in here in November. And we'll spend 2 or 3 days with them, helping those groups to get orientation in terms of the Irish market and all that we offer here in Ireland. But I suppose since this particular webinar today is very much focused for Irish companies, I want to kind of go a little bit deeper into the whole Irish trip. This is a trip we're planning in the first week in February. And again, we'll have 10 to 15 Irish companies with us, hopefully, that are interested in finding out what it's like to do business in the US, and particular particularly what it's like to do business in South Carolina and Pennsylvania. So the structure of the trip will be a 5-day trip, probably flying out on a Sunday, coming back the following Saturday. You'll spend 2 days in Pennsylvania, 2 days in South Carolina. And for each of those locations, for each of those 2-day periods, you'll probably spend the first half a day or so getting orientation on a whole bunch of practical issues, like how do I form a business? What are the local financial issues that I need to be concerned about? What are the agency supports that that particular state offers? Are there any particular HR or logistics issues? What are the IP considerations that I need to take on board? If there's any other special needs that you need to be aware of, we'll go through those with you, and we'll have guest presenters come in and present out how all that works. And then for the other 1.5 days to make up that 2-day period, we will be going to customer industrial sites. We'll be visiting both Irish companies that have made the transition already into those states, and we can talk to them about what that experience is like. And we'll also get to talk to target potential customers in each of those geographies. As I said before, South Carolina is very much in the automotive and aerospace industry, so obviously that 1.5 days in South Carolina will be mainly working with aerospace and automotive companies. And in the case of Pennsylvania, the 1.5 days will be much more focused on the life sciences, biopharma, medtech kind of advanced manufacturing space. So you'll get a taste of both over the 5-day period. They're very different states. Their cost structures are quite different. Their taxations are quite different. Their locations are quite different. Where they're similar is that they're very, very pro-business. And as you saw earlier on, that's been driven by the people that we have on the team. So that's stage one. And for some of you on the call here today or listening to this audio file, you may be very interested in that. And please, if you are, please let us know, and we'll talk a lot more with you about that. Okay? Stage two, then, I'm just going to give a cursory overview of stage two because it's only really relevant for those companies that want to advance beyond stage one. But just to let you know what's around the corner, as it were, if you decide to go that far, stage two is going to be broken down over 3 phases: demystify, de-risk, and deliver. It's going to be a 3, 6, and 3 month, a 12-month program in total. The focus of Demystify is about taking all of the fear factor and the mystery and the knowledge gap out of the system. So at the end of 3 months, you will know everything you need to know about that market, about your target customers, about what you need to do to get your technology ready in terms of planning your program and so forth. So it'll be very, very intensive. De-risk is all about doing the engineering work. So now that you've made your plan and you've figured out what you need to do and you've got your shopping list together of all the bits and pieces from your demystify stage, de-risk is about going and doing that. In other words, transforming your product, building out your minimal viable products, putting those minimal viable products in front of customers, doing the demos, getting the feedback, iterating the products, etc., and doing the qualifications on your product. And then the last phase is deliver, which is all about ramping. So once you've hopefully got a line of sight on your first couple of customer orders, it's about ramping. So what's that first couple of years going to be like in that new market in terms of hiring people, setting up your operation, scaling your operation, financing your operation, and so forth. Now, what's fundamentally different about this stage two versus anything that's in the market today is that we're going to take a group of about 15 to 20 companies through this program that will be made up of US SMEs and Irish SMEs all mixed up together. So that in that sense, they're going on exactly the same journey, and there's a lot of peer learning that will go on between those groups. And in this structured way, by going through Demystify, De-risk, and Deliver, we're going to assign coaches to groups of 5 or 6 companies in terms of the subclusters, and each group of 5 or 6 companies will get extensive coaching and support, which will involve learning and advice around how to approach the tasks, feedback and counseling around how those tasks have been managed, and then one-to-one support to be able to help those companies with that journey. So there's about 30 odd days of coaching being provided to each of the clusters, and there'll be about 50 days of engineering support. And I want to emphasize this. IMR is going to stay up close and personal, going to roll up our sleeves, going to work hands-on with the companies and provide them 50 days of engineering support. So when you're doing your demos and you're doing your market research and you're getting your MVPs ready, we'll be there with you side by side, helping you with that journey. So as I said, we'll expand on this a lot more in due course. It's planning to kick this off in spring of 2020, and it's really only relevant for those companies that have gone through stage one and still want to stay with the program. So as I said, IMR, we're a not-for-profit organisation funded in three parts, funded from Enterprise Ireland, funded from Europe, and funded from Irish industry. We work with technology. We're nearly all of us engineers, and we've worked in an engineering background. And our job is to go off and study the latest and greatest technology, figure out how to translate it and make it easily absorbable by Irish industry so that Irish industry can then take that into its own manufacturing processes and product development cycles and create products that are world-class products and be competitive on a world-class stage. We talk about demystify, de-risk, and deliver. I've talked about those already. We demystified the experience, we de-risked the experience, and we deliver the results. We work across a lot of different technologies. We've right now about 55, 60 people working in the group, and we're growing. We've ambitions to grow over 100 people within the not too distant future. So we would have groups of 3 to 5 to 6 engineers working on just about every one of these technology groups, and they're all experts in those particular fields. So it could be 3D printing, it could be augmented reality, virtual reality, data visualization, UX design, data analytics, or whatever. A lot of interest in IoT, in industrial robotics as well. So our job is to go off and scout those technologies, and then we work with the OEMs in those spaces. We have a center here in Rathcoole, which is very much office-based, and we have a huge physical lab down in Mullingar, 30,000 square feet physical lab where a lot of the equipment is. So a lot of the robotic equipment, IoT equipment, AR, VR equipment, and so on is down in Mullingar, and that's where a lot of the collaborations happen and so on with companies. In terms of our capacity, we've, as I said, about, I think we wrote this file, it was 53, I think latest count, somewhere like 55 people working in the group. We work on about 40 active collaborative researches, clusters at the moment throughout up and down the country. We're very heavily involved in terms of connectivity into Europe. In fact, I can honestly say we punch well above our weight in that regard. We sit on the leadership committee of 12 different EU steering folks, and as I said earlier in the presentation, we use that to help Irish companies get connected in through EU programs into the EU. And moving on, I suppose the 4 key themes that we tend to focus on here are, first of all, digitalization, which is all about using data to be able to make a difference, i.e. to help you control your process, understand your process, and, if you like, allow you to make decisions and target actions within your process because you know exactly what's generating your trends and your performance indicators in your business. The second one is the whole automation and advanced control, which is all about IoT and industrial robotics and simulation controls and so forth. So we work with probably about 25, 30 companies in this space, all of the A-list robotic suppliers, IoT suppliers, and so forth. The third area is design for manufacturability, which is, I think you're all pretty familiar with that. It's all about selecting the right materials, the right processes, the right tools, designing the product in the most optimum way to actually give you the best results. So we do a lot of work with companies there. And finally, in the sustainable manufacturing space, this is all about doing all of that engineering work, making manufacturing as carbon friendly and as respectful of the earth as possible by selecting the right materials, recycling where possible, designing with recycling in mind, and so forth. So these are 3 or 4 key areas, that we focus on here in IMR. I'm going to change gears now to move on and look at our collaborative partners, starting with South Carolina. So South Carolina, just a heads up for you, It's a state that's almost exactly the same size as Ireland, and it's got 4.7 million people. So it's almost exactly the same population as Ireland, and it's got. First thing that struck me about South Carolina, and I've a lot of years, as I said, going to the US. I've only traveled through it a few times before a year ago, but I've just since I've been there, quite a few times over the last year as I've worked with Anita and Jacob, and I think it's just a fantastic state. It's got all the positive weather conditions of Florida without the storms, in my view. But more than anything else, it's a state that has really taken foreign direct investment very, very seriously. And they've attracted a huge amount of industry into the state over the last 6 or 7 years. And in particular, they've focused very heavily on automotive and aerospace. Now, there are lots of other industries as well, and very much an emerging software business as well. An agri-business as well. But the two big ones that when people think of South Carolina is they think about automotive and aerospace. And in that regard, I think they are probably one of the most prolific states in the US in that regard. They have about 3,500 manufacturing companies, as you can see here in the box on the foil. And they've got about 240,000 or so employees in the manufacturing space. So manufacturing is a huge employer in South Carolina, and manufacturing is a huge focus for South Carolina. So moving on to look at, as I said, they've had a lot of inward investment. You can see a lot of the fantastic A-list brands there on the page. We'll go into some of those a little bit more detail in a minute. But over the last 5 or 6 years, they've had north of $10 billion of inward investment. So it's a story not unlike Ireland in that we've had huge inward investment as well over the last 10 or 15 years in the medtech space and the biopharma space and so on, and in the IT space. But in South Carolina, it's been in the aerospace and in the automotive space. So to look at those two subplots, and you have first of all the automotive. Outside of the Great Lakes area, I would say it's one of the most prolific manufacturing bases for automotive. BMW, US headquarters there. Every X5 on the planet is made, to my knowledge, in Spartanburg, which is in the northern part of the state, and the upstate that Jacob sits in. But also you have Michelin, you've Bosch, you've Borg-Warner, and so on. You see all the different brands here. So there is huge employment in automotive. And in fact, I know of several Irish companies that have moved to South Carolina to be part of the automotive industry there. And when you travel to South Carolina, you'll get an opportunity to meet some of those as part of your trade visit at the end of the year. The next piece is aerospace. If automotive is big, aerospace is as big or bigger. I think there's about 400 aerospace-related companies in South Carolina. It's absolutely huge. And in terms of you have Lockheed Martin and you have Michelin and GE Aviation, and it just goes on and on, Timken and so on. All of these companies are there, and all of the suppliers are there. So it's a huge market opportunity for Irish companies. And I know a lot of you listening to this call today are interested in the aerospace industry. You must be looking at South Carolina. It is an absolute must. You must go there. And then I suppose if you look at the last 6 years, they've had about 147 companies already move into the state. And it just kind of speaks maybe to the volume of new companies that are coming into the state. So South Carolina is definitely one of the new go-to places for foreign direct investment into the United States. Moving on to Pennsylvania, well, it's a very different kind of state. First of all, it was a lot bigger. So I said to you, South Carolina was similar in size to Ireland. Pennsylvania is about 3 times the size of South Carolina. There's about close on 13.5 or 14 million people there. There's only 4.5 to 4.7 million people in South Carolina. So it's about 3 times or thereabouts the size of South Carolina. Very different industry type. Industry up there is very much focused on advanced manufacturing, life sciences, and and the whole that whole sector is, as it were, the med tech sector. They do have aerospace as well, and they do have some of the other sectors. Yes, that's true. And when we go there may be an opportunity to see some of those companies. But much more focused, I'd say, in the advanced manufacturing, life sciences space, and and it's a very different state. It's got a lot of universities, got a lot of ports. It's got a lot of European connections because of those ports, a lot of airports. If South Carolina was a country on its own right, it would be the 19th richest country in the world. And just think about that. That's phenomenal. And it's very, 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 while it's big and it's focused, it's still very much focused on helping small to medium enterprises. And you can see there is about close on 12,796. We'll round it up to 13,000 manufacturing companies in Pennsylvania. So, and they're centered around the big cities like Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Harrisburg, and so on. Okay. So the location, as I said, is absolutely key. Pennsylvania, it's within a day's ride of about 40% of the U.S. population. It's a huge, densely populated east coast of America, up into New York, Boston, and Philadelphia. So it's a very densely populated region. A lot of A-list kind of universities and so on based in Pennsylvania, and it's ranked in consistently, whether it be in terms of the top 5 to 10 in the United States in terms of technology hiring, technology FDI, and so on. So we often think of US maybe in context of California or some of these other locations. Pennsylvania is right up there. It's in 5th, 6th, or 7th, or 8th, or 9th position in just about every one of those key indicators. So very progressive state, but not so progressive as to not care about SME. And this is something I would like to emphasize strongly, that for some states, not only are they, they may have different locations and taxes and what have you, but their whole philosophy in terms of working with small to medium enterprise is quite different. Some states are not that interested, to be honest. Other states are extremely interested. And I can honestly say that both South Carolina and Pennsylvania are among those who are extremely interested in working with small to medium enterprise. Okay? And then finally, I suppose from a Pennsylvanian point of view, you'll see a lot of the A-list type of companies that they have there. A lot of those are centered, as I said, around Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and probably even more so around Pittsburgh, where you have universities like Carnegie Mellon and so on are located there in the greater Pittsburgh region. So great state, great people, very, very focused on advanced manufacturing, life sciences, and very, very focused on, yes, helping large companies come into the state, but equally focused, I can assure you, on helping small companies. And I think Joe and Rob and the team in Pennsylvania will make Irish companies feel very welcome. And again, we have lots of examples of Irish companies that have gone there, small to medium companies that have had a very positive experience. So finally, I'm going to close with, I've shared a lot with you today, and as I said, I've just given you a quick overview of what we're trying to do. This is a collaboration that we've been working on. There's a large group of people involved. I've listed out the folks that are the main go-to people, but there's a cast of 20 to 30 other organizations and people that have been absolutely key. If you're interested in this program, we're asking you to please make yourself known to Jacob or Rob or Louise. You see their emails and contact details there. The first step is to talk to us, and probably the second step, if you're interested in what we're doing and being part of this whole experience, is maybe to join us in stage 1 and be part of the trade events at the end of the year. And if that's still something that holds an interest for you and you're ready and the time is right for you in your own business, then we would leave the option open for you to maybe participate as part of stage 2 and be part of this unique experience that we're setting up next year for 15 to 20 companies to be part of the stage 2 program. I just want to close by saying thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this webinar, and we look forward to talking to you, and hopefully you are interested in being part of this program. And thank you once again to all those who contributed to pulling this together, and especially to the core team that I listed earlier.